Okay, we will have the last presentation, joint presentation by Nathanaël Wallenhorst and Bruno Villalba. Nathanaël will be online and will talk for both of them. But I present both of them because it's a joint talk. So Bruno Villalba is a professor of political science at AgroParisTech. He is a member of the laboratory Printemps. He works on environmental political theory, and more precisely, he examines the capacity of the democratic system to reformulate its projects based on environmental constraints. His prolific writing includes a number of influential books, such as Sociologie de l'environnement, co-written with Paul Carey, Politique de sobriété, Gunther Anders' 10 thèses sur Tchernobyl, and many others. So Nathanaël Wallenhorst is professor and dean of the Faculty of Education at Université Catholique de l'Ouest. He has an interdisciplinary background with 2 international joint PhDs, one in educational sciences and philosophy, and a second one in environmental sciences and political science. He has also published many books, 20 books, addressing the intersections of politics, education, and anthropology in the Anthropocene, which includes the Encyclopedia of the Anthropocene, co-edited with Christoph Wolff, and Qui sauvera la planète? Vortex face à l'Anthropocène. So their presentation will focus on redefining sobriety within the context of the Anthropocene, positioning it as a vital politicized approach to address the ecological crisis. So, Nathanaël, we listen to you.
Thank you very much for your invitation, and I'm very sorry to be here online. So, in 1854, the poet, philosopher, and naturalist Henry David Thoreau extolled the virtues of a simple life in the woods as a way of escaping the vanity of a commercial world that is often futile and distracts us from the need for inner coherence. He questions the relevance of a development model that values commercial exchange, novelty at all cost and accumulation, and which, through the constant work of institutions, the state, the church, etc., reduces the freedom of the individual. Thoreau was, above all, concerned to the conduct of an experiment in life as far as possible. To this end, he experimented for 2 years with a simple existence in a cabin he built in the edge of Walden Pond in Massachusetts, and I quote, about 1.5 miles south of the village of Concord. And he regularly visits the town's shops and his friends and family. Above all, it was a search for a way of life that promotes the deepest possible personal fulfillment that he sets out of discover by subjecting his own body to this momentary experience of sobriety. This temporary act of stripping down does, however, led him to specify what he feels is necessary. I quote, by the words necessary to life, I mean everything which, at the fruit of man's effort, has been from the beginning, has become by the effect of a long habit so important to human life that few people, if anyone, will ever try to do without it, whether because of wildlife, poverty, or philosophy. It may mean living covered clothing or fuel, but by no means luxury. Sobriety produces a form of elevation, of inner exploration. In other words, it contributes to the possibility of refocusing on a life without waste. Necessity is therefore not exclusively material, and it is also expressed by the need to establish an ongoing relationship with nature. I quote, "I come and go with a strange freedom in nature, becoming part of herself. Am I not myself in a part, lives and topspoil?" Thoreau is close to a transcendental vitalist quasi-religious vision which insists on the mediated experience of relationship with nature, on sensual introspection with it, rather than a critique of modernity as such. But his experience is a solitary one. I find it, I quote, "I find it salutary to be alone most of the time. I like being alone." Which soon makes human proximity non-essential. But the experience of sobriety is only fleeting because once the experiment is completed, the walker carries his solitude into the midst of other people. We are now living in the Anthropocene epoch. The sobriety we need to invent now can be inspired by Thoreau's experience of life, but it has to be conceived on the scale of humanity. That's why we can't conceive without politicizing it. The Anthropocene is a particularly complex conceptual tool worked on by many scientific communities, which can be understood thanks to the simplifications that we can make. To put it simply, our planet functions as a result of the three systems: the climate, the biosphere, and the societies. Today, the climate is running out of control, ecosystems are collapsing, and our societies are accelerating. The three processes, runaway, collapse, acceleration, of the three main systems that structure our planet, climate, biosphere, human societies, are mutually reinforcing. We are now caught up in a veritable hurricane or vortex that will continue to weaken human life in society in the next decades to come, and even run the risk of compromising it. All bioclimatic knowledge is organized around a paradigm of rupture. Tomorrow will not be an extension of today. This is what is so disturbing. Sudden, irreversible, and unsustainable ruptures for human life in society moves from hypothesis to probable situation. And we are getting closer and closer to the point of no return. What is at stake? Everyone knows it, but I need to say it again. Feeding ourselves and having access to water, being able to live somewhere on Earth. What is at stake? Our ability to think. Without control of the ecosystem, there is no production of agricultural surpluses, so no other activities than looking for food. How do you conceive your own relationship with the world, not only as individual, but also as researcher? How can we build analytical categories, framework, reference systems, and indicators that can best describe this unprecedented situation? We can easily describe the negative effects of human activities: preemption, domination, exploitation, growing inequalities, injustice between generations, injustice between the poor and the rich, injustice between today and tomorrow. And what is deeply significant is that today it is geologists who are seeing this dark side of humanity in the sediments and not just social scientists. But beyond such a picture, how can we invent other relationships to the world, to living world, and between human groups while escaping this grip on the living? We believe that the path of sobriety is an appropriate political response. Sobriety consists in building a policy of adjustment between our aspirations, development, progress, justice, and the capacity of the ecosystem, of the Earth system to meet them. It can mobilize moral registers, as shown by Thoreau, but above all, it must be accompanied by intense democratic debate to change the way we situate ourselves in the world. We see sobriety here as an adjustment policy to avoid accentuating the ruptures of the Anthropocene, because that's the problem, the main problem. Here, three elements are necessary. The first one, negotiate what is necessary, which does not harm the continuity of the reproduction of relationships and the living things. Second, debating what is necessary, amplifying the democratic framework of the choice of collective constraint by including non-humans who are more concerned than we are by the Anthropocene. Build what is necessary, equitable distribution, regulatory tools such as the carbon card, rationing, etc. I'm going to take a pointillistic approach and identify 5 points that seems important to Bruno and me. First one, agree on the terms. We find ourselves facing a profound contradictions. Ought we continue or even ramp up development-driven policies in the name of social justice and the free market? Or ought we, on the other hand, to attempt to control or even better reduce the negative impact that we are having on the Earth system? Our ability to act is significantly constrained by the limits of the planet. No longer it is a matter of answering the call for the right to have the rights, the political perspectives upon which liberal democracy is founded, but instead of measuring what we can still access fairly and sustainably. Indeed, we must begin to spotlight a policy of sobriety which will allow cohesion among human societies, living ecosystems, and the Earth system to endure in the long term. In order to achieve this, it is necessary to enter into a debate as to the terms, objectives, and ends of the policies developed on the basis of the principle of sobriety. What are fundamental needs and standards of well-being common to everyone, which are compatible with what the planet can sustain? What must we give up in order to keep what is necessary, what is essential? How can we fairly distribute this renouncement of the superfluous to enable as many people as possible to attain a certain level of comfort? How much is enough? Of course, sobriety-based policies can only be developed through democratic debate. The task will involve in a great deal of political judging between irreversible ecological impacts and social inequality. As part of the debate, we can examine and discuss complex potential means of action, such as quotas, rationing, environmental taxes, and so forth. In addition, the negotiations will need to take place in different levels of the decision-making hierarchy from local to international. Sobriety is a transition which appears to offer the least drastic way possible of moving from one type of the world, one of abundance with consequences, and adapting our society to exist in a more constrained world. It is both a method and a narrative. As a method, it calls into question the viability of the transitional solutions that are deployed, taking account of the consequences of our decision for fairness. Thus, sobriety is a social and political process of coordination, of negotiation, aimed at establishing equitable division of the effort required to reduce the consequences of our social practices on ecological balances. As a narrative, it calls into question the very foundations of our political apparatus, institutional dimension, means of production, individual identities, scientific perspective, etc., by viewing them in relationships to the horrific reality of ecological meltdown with no form of sugarcoating. However, it opened up a new prospect for individual emancipation and a more balanced, sustainable relationship with the earth system. The second small point, to really politicize sobriety, we must place scientific knowledge at the heart of our organizations. Scientific knowledge makes it possible to validate the hypothesis of a new politics to be constructed in order to escape to the determinism it presents. The Anthropocene is the period of limits, which must not be exceeded. This scientific knowledge, published in the most prestigious peer-reviewed academic journals, is the only mediation that allows us to be in touch with reality. It is the only mediation that allows us to see the wall against which we are crashing, because reality is still largely insensitive to our senses. We need to understand the reorganization of the Earth system, its impacts on human and non-human life, its impact on our societies. We need to understand the biogeophysical elements of matter, but also the socio-political and economic causes that have led us into this impasse. If we do not fully understand what is happening, we will not fully see the wall, its foundation, the materials that constitute it. We will then have a vague awareness of it. We will not take the measure of the gravity of the situation. We will try to adapt our activities without changing the underlying logic that drives them, and none of our action will be equal to the challenges. We will have a good conscience, but we will have participated in the drama. The criterion that allows us to know if we see the wall is the deflagration that it makes us experience. It is the awareness of the extent of our powerlessness. It is the sensitive experience of the drama that is unfolding before your eyes and that you cannot do anything about. When I talk remaining in the presence of the scientific knowledge, it is very different from technical solutions. We need to be careful about confusing science with technology. We are often caught up in a narrative that wants to change the world through technical innovations without taking into account the systemic function of the earth, without being inscribed in reality. We often try to give an answer before we have even posed the problem. We don't take time to take stock of the situation, and we propose solutions which are out of touch with reality. That's what solutionists do. They give technical answer to problems that they haven't identified. And we have to be careful because that sells well these technical solutions. The fourth little point, sobriety, or fourth or third, the third, sorry. Sobriety means breaking with the continuity of a productivist and developmentalist vision of the world. What is the biogeophysical reality? Ahead of us, there is rupture, disruption, either in the Earth system, which leads to the societal and civilizational chaos, or in our way of life, which makes it possible to contain the bioclimatic runaway. There is no transition. A transition does not fit in the biogeophysical reality. According to the Paris Agreement, we need to reduce our CO2 equivalent footprint by 5 times. This is one indicator among others that has the immense limit of reducing the complexity of our planet functioning. How do we expect to achieve a 5-fold reduction in our CO2 equivalent emissions without transforming our economic model? None of the actions that are accustomed to mention would allow this. No electric car, no reduction in the temperature of our homes, no reduction in meat consumption, etc., is efficient if our economic system is not radically transformed. The fourth point, sobriety implies learning to judge politics, but to judge politics from a special point, from the reality, the point of the reality. Biogeophysical knowledge enables us to represent reality and thus dispel the thick blanket of smoke that hangs over the state of the Earth system. We must therefore learn to see the world, the socio-political and economic space from the Earth system and its knowledge. The challenge is to embark a new vision of the world based on the Earth's knowledge. I would even say based on the matter. The stakes are high because over the last 2,000 years, politics has positioned itself as the authority that defines reality by fighting against the inevitability of nature or the gods. If we are to succeed in humanity's greatest challenge, which is to contain runaway, the bioclimate runaway, in order to sustain human life in society, it's essential that the real redefine politics. Only then will politics be able to regain its rightful power and to regain control on the neoliberal economy, which over the last 40 years has gradually become the new inevitability that is so deleterious to human life in society. And that makes it impossible for the politics to prevent short-term job creation, even if it sows of the branch on which we are sitting and from which we receive life. Understanding how the Earth system works means mastering the following equations. Contributing with our current lifestyles means no human life in society in a very short time. Containing bioclimatic runaway means ensuring the sustainability of human life in society and means taking radical politics. Understanding what is at stake means accepting measures that restrict individual freedom because citizens aren't idiots. Biodiversity is a key element in human history if it is to continue. The Earth system is not a machine that can be repaired. It is what makes life possible. And the Anthropocene is not a problem to solve. It is the interpretative framework of reality. And the fifth small point, sobriety requires redefining the place for political debate. Okay, but how do we go about it? If we want to contain the bioclimatic runaway, isn't it necessary to stop a number of activities in order to redistribute forces, investment, and wealth? Today, we are in a situation where, swearing by the market, we are setting fires to give work to the firemen. Creating waste gives work to a large international industry. And that's not all. Speculating on agricultural commodities gives work to the traders, and so on. So, who do we start with? With the luxury industry? Are Rolex or Dior handbag or Porsche really essential to life in society? Or cosmetics industry? Couldn't we live without makeup? Unless it would be more efficient from the outset to contain the environmental footprint of GAFA or BATX. Honestly, wouldn't we be less stupid without TikTok and YouTube Short? We could also arrest Total & Co. because these economic flagships are like organized crime syndicates. But for now, we need an ambulance to pick up the day we have a heart attack. But perhaps we should also consider increasing the environmental footprint of certain activities, such as education or the production of knowledge, to confront barbarism. We need to talk about all this together as citizens, assemblies, and conventions within companies, local authorities, and organizations of all kinds, but also and above all in the National Assembly, as well as in the Senate and cabinet meetings. It's not a question of pitting the right measures against the wrong ones or listening to new, supposedly better informed technocrats. What we need here are not economic experts, but citizens' debates on the choices facing our policies, with the essential questions of politicizing sobriety and organizing the dismantling of the deadly parts of our globalized economies. It's not much the solutions that need to be implemented that are important, but rather the way in which the concert action is led. It's a question of debating the issues at stake and learning to give up in order to avoid losing everything. Here, the Anthropocene is not a problem calling for solutions to be produced and sold. It is the structural framework within which politics can regain its power. Today, giving the impression that transition policies are equal to the challenge is like being that a band-aid will cure a cancer. Because let's make no mistake, bioclimatic knowledge is not organized around the paradigm of transition but rupture. There will be neither transition or green growth because these dynamics are unfortunately not embedded in the reality that allows human life in society. They destroy the conditions of human habitability of the earth. And I have finished.
Thank you very much, Nathanaël, and Bruno. I see that he is with us.
Yes.
So we'll ask. Has someone a question? Emily?
Thank you very much for that talk. I'm curious. I struggle with this as someone who works in a university where we're encouraged, for example, to travel a lot. Just as one example, how you work to implement this idea of sobriety in your life.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I am not an example, but Bruno is an example. No, I am not at all. I'm not an example. Uh, um, I live in the world. I try to do things in my life, etc. But I don't even want to say it and to say, oh, look how I am good at, etc. Um, um, I think we have to be quite careful with that in our scientific communities. Some of us travel a lot, and have a very large environmental footprint, and sometimes it is too much. Okay. But if we want that our world is still a world in which we can live in democracies, in which we can fight against barbarism, education, and to produce knowledge is something essential. And we have to stop a, a lot of activities. I'm not sure that the first activities we have to stop is the circulation of knowledge and the will to build peace. When I say that, of course, we have to look it carefully and to speak between us about these things. But I want to live in a world in which knowledge are circulating, are produced, and in which the industry of luxury is stopped. I would say something like that. But we need rules. We need rules for that. But maybe Bruno wants to say something. Or...
Thank you. Who has
Le problème, c'est
another
que mon anglais est
question?
tellement mauvais que
Bruno, want to add something? Bruno, you can talk.
Non, je disais que mon anglais est tellement mauvais que vous allez rien comprendre. Donc, je ne sais pas si je peux. Je vais envoyer la réponse à Nathanaël, qui sera mon traducteur.
You can add.
For example,
tu peux parler
Bruno...
français, Bruno, je pense.
Ok, ouais, merci beaucoup. En fait, la question est intéressante puisqu'elle soulève la question de la cohérence entre l'expression d'une idée, politique de sobriété, et l'existence individuelle. C'est assez intéressant que cette question de la cohérence est rarement trop évoquée quand des gens vont travailler sur les inégalités sociales, par exemple. On ne va pas leur demander s'ils sont adeptes de la pauvreté volontaire pour être proches des publics avec lesquels ils travaillent. Mais peu importe. Ce qui est intéressant quand on travaille sur la question de la sobriété, et comme l'a dit Nathanaël, notamment en parlant de l'expérience de Soro, c'est que ça questionne vraiment l'intimité des pratiques. C'est-à-dire qu'on voit bien, c'est ce que disait Nathanaël, que chaque acte de l'activité sociale, dont la recherche, a un impact sur l'écologie, sur les questions écologiques. Et donc, on voit bien comment, finalement, interroger le rapport à la sobriété, c'est à la fois interroger nos pratiques de vie quotidiennes, hein, la manière dont on va consommer, par exemple, le luxe, etc., la manière aussi dont on va instaurer un rapport à la mobilité, et puis la manière dont on va construire la carrière. Et c'est pour répondre à notre collègue à cette question-là. Autrement dit, il y a des articles qui ont été faits là-dessus. Plus vous voyagez, c'est-à-dire plus vous allez travailler à l'étranger, et donc travailler en anglais, par exemple, plus vous allez être cité. Et il y a une espèce de corrélation qui va s'établir parce que ça renforce la circularité des idées attendues. Mais ce n'est pas pour autant que cette circulation des idées, elle est nécessairement une théorisation, une innovation théorique. Et donc là, on voit bien l'effet d'accumulation de la connaissance scientifique, mais pas nécessairement une accumulation de connaissances scientifiques qui serait ajustée aux enjeux écologiques. Voilà, donc l'idée vraiment importante, hein, c'est comment on construit une cohérence entre une pratique de vie individuelle, une pratique de chercheur et les tensions écologiques. Vous voyez bien, j'aurais eu du mal à l'expliquer en anglais avec mon anglais qui est extrêmement sobre.
Et vraiment pour moi, on est au cœur d'une guerre des idées très, très forte, et puis d'un rapport de force. Et à cet endroit, il faut pas lâcher. Et, et ne pas lâcher, ça suppose aussi une empreinte environnementale. Mais après, faut la doser avec intelligence et puis dans une confrontation avec d'autres, etc. Et sans faire des trucs dans son coin. Je pense à l'usage de l'avion, je sais pas quoi, mais en l'exposant dans le labo, machin, etc. Mais sans non plus à un moment donné lâcher finalement lâcher un combat qui est vital, quoi. Voilà, et qui a une empreinte environnementale.
Okay, thank you. Merci. We have time for one more question.
Je vais me tourner vers la caméra, j'espère que vous me voyez. Je me permets de poser la question en français, du coup, on est parti sur le français. Moi, je me demandais comment est-ce que vous pouvez donner envie aux gens de vivre une vie sobre, parce que j'ai compris que pour provoquer le changement, vous avez parlé de beaucoup de débattre, d'instaurer de nouvelles politiques, etc. Mais comment est-ce que vous pouvez amener les politiques justement avec vous? Comment leur donner envie pour ensuite essayer de changer les choses pour tout le monde? Parce que c'est un peu compliqué de dire à tout le monde « Ouais, ne prenez plus l'avion et ne mangez plus de viande, c'est super », alors que personne n'en a vraiment envie, quoi. Voilà.
Moi, donner envie, je sais pas faire. Il y en a certains, ils savent faire, Cyril Dion, etc. Voilà, ils savent. Voilà, moi, je sais pas faire du tout. Le seul truc pour moi, c'est arriver dans le réel et quitter nos fantasmes. La seule médiation dont on dispose pour être dans le réel, c'est les savoirs scientifiques. Et donc, du coup, moi, le seul truc heureusement, hein, c'est pas moi le président ou le je sais pas quoi. Le seul moyen dont je dispose, moi, en tout cas, et qui fait sens pour moi, c'est lire des articles scientifiques qui nous permettent d'être dans le réel et qui nous permettent de désirer, de voir nos libertés être restreintes pour être réarticulées aux limites, quoi. Voilà, et refonder une expérience démocratique, non pas simplement à partir de l'illimitation, mais à partir des limites. Et donc, de fait, comment rendre désirable, etc. Moi, ça, je sais pas faire. Mais je suis convaincu que si on trouve un dispositif permettant aux gens de demeurer suffisamment en présence des savoirs qui génèrent une déflagration existentielle, eh ben, on peut désirer des mesures qui sont impopulaires, entre guillemets. Mais après, on va dire oui, oui, c'est très utopique, etc. Oui, oui, tout à fait. Voilà. Mais Bruno a peut-être quelque chose de beaucoup plus réaliste à proposer.
Et malheureusement, non. Je pense que le travail du scientifique, c'est pas nécessairement d'accompagner les conditions d'émergence d'un nouvel espace politique. Euh, En tout cas, moi, d'un point de vue d'écologie politique, au sens le courant de l'écologie politique, hein, pas le courant militant de l'écologie politique, je crois que on peut construire une espèce de pessimisme méthodologique, c'est-à-dire accepter que la négociation politique ne se situe plus dans un espace illimité de ce que l'on souhaite construire. Ça, c'était le projet de la modernité jusqu'ici, parce qu'elle ne s'était jamais heurtée à des limites planétaires, des limites matérielles. Et dès lors qu'on est confronté à ces limites-là, il faut effectivement construire un autre cadrage, c'est-à-dire une manière de délimiter la réflexion collective pour aboutir à des solutions qui sont ajustées aux contraintes et aux limites planétaires. Et ça, moi, je trouve que c'est extrêmement stimulant. C'est-à-dire que si l'on continue à imaginer, par exemple, je vais prendre un sujet qui parlera à chacun, nous fonctionnons encore dans le registre de ce qu'on appelle la justice redistributive. C'est-à-dire comment faire en sorte que les plus pauvres accèdent à un niveau de confort que voilà, notre échelle moderne a instauré comme étant celui d'une certaine mobilité, d'une certaine consommation, d'une certaine capacité finalement à articuler l'ensemble de nos choix individuels, et tout ça dans une progressivité, dans une constante, hein, dans une croissance de l'accès aux ressources. Et donc là, si on réfléchit sur la manière d'instaurer un autre rapport au monde, eh bien, c'est instaurer effectivement une autre manière de construire ce qui va être possible en société. Et moi, je trouve que ça renforce justement une autonomie décisionnelle du politique. C'est-à-dire que justement, cette solution de la croissance dépossède l'individu de ses capacités d'action. C'est-à-dire que c'est le macrosystème technique qui va lui dire ce qui va être souhaitable. C'est l'impératif catégorique de la croissance économique qui va lui dire ce qui est souhaitable. Mais si on raisonne dans les contraintes planétaires, ça suppose de réimaginer d'autres rapports sociaux. Et ça, c'est extrêmement stimulant. Et donc, la contribution du chercheur, c'est de dire qu'il y a des espaces d'innovation institutionnelle, qu'il y a des espaces d'innovation démocratique, à condition effectivement que les citoyens se saisissent de ces choses-là. Alors évidemment, c'est moins un discours qui est engageant pour dire on va prendre aux riches pour donner aux pauvres et tout le monde va être plus heureux. C'est aussi un cadre qui dit il faut prendre aux riches pour donner aux pauvres, certes, mais jusqu'à une certaine limite. Et puis surtout, il faut tenir compte des non-humains qui sont aussi des partenaires indispensables dans la négociation démocratique. Donc vous voyez, on est dans une période de transition d'imagination, mais on ne pourra le faire que si malheureusement on accepte les contraintes écologiques. C'est cette dimension de ce que j'évoquais tout à l'heure de pessimisme méthodologique.
Merci beaucoup Nathanaël et Bruno pour cette présentation très intéressante et cette discussion stimulante.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you.